Chris Hill, welcome to In Studio.
Thank you.
And thanks for taking the time to spend with us today. I know you're a busy man, traveling the world and spending some time in Jamaica and taking time out. We really appreciate that. You describe yourself, first of all, as a sports manager, correct?
Yeah, part of the job.
Part of the job. You want to tell me about the sports manager versus the sports agent?
Well, the sports agent acts more like a broker in terms of negotiating the price of a contract. A manager takes into consideration the beginning of a career, managing a career, which have several levels into it. So you have from amateur, how to train, how to mentally prepare to be a professional. And then once you become professional, how do you manage yourself as a business? Because that's how athletes are, their businesses. Agents don't care about that. They just care about the brokerage deal and take the fee. A manager typically stays on with his client 3 to 5 years or more after they retire. The agent, once the player has no more value in terms of agency fee, he just moves on to the next one.
Well, we first met a couple of years ago when you were here looking at a young, talented Jamaican footballer, Duncan McKenzie, who you subsequently took on trial to Europe. You want to tell me how that went?
That went surprisingly well. So in Jamaica, just to put things back into perspective, I had been coming to Jamaica for a couple of years looking for basketball and football athletes that could be professionals in Europe. And you start around 14, 15 to see who's there and their work ethic and their potential. So we came across Duncan through my cousin Marky, who introduced me to Duncan's mother, and I went to watch him play for Real Mona, and I said, look, pretty talented player on different facets of his game, with a lot of upside potential, given that you could see what he was doing, and given the right environment, he could do much better. So we looked at several players, and a lot of the videos do not give credit to the athlete. So we took Duncan over, tried him under 19, and because that was the strategy, and he did well. Then he did an exhibition game in which he struggled in the beginning, simply because of the lack of coaching at that level to compete at a European level. But then after 15, 20 minutes, he realized that, hey, I can be more aggressive. And he made a fantastic move down the wing, dribbled past 3 guys, went in and put the ball back into the corner near the penalty spot, and the striker was there and scored a goal. And so after the game, and everybody looked at me going, wow, this kid's pretty talented. We didn't see that in the video. So that's how Duncan lit up the lights over there, and that's how they came back and said, okay, we would like to sign him.
Who is this specifically?
So we work with different clubs. Our strategy is to work with Serbian clubs, because Serbian clubs are more similar to Jamaican in a mental and cultural environment. They love music, they love life, they're just full of energy. And in addition to that, I believe that for a Jamaican player coming out young, they have, with the Croatians as well as the Serbians, they have a fantastic school for developing players at a very high level. So they've brought a lot of players up. So I just said, okay, let's go there. So you have Red Star and Partizan, which are the two top professional leagues. They play Europa Cup and Champions League. We had a deal with Grafichar, which is one of the development clubs for Red Star, and they said, okay, we'll take him on, and if he develops well, he could go into Grafichar's first team, and then if he's really good, he can go into Red Star. And as we know, Red Star is a Champions League team. So for us, it was a pretty structured approach without having to move left, right, and center across Europe. I don't believe in showcasing players across Europe because it's not constructive for their development. So Grafichar has that philosophy, and they took him on, and there it is.
Well, but before we continue, I just want to shout out to Creative Sounds Studios in Kingston, Jamaica, who are hosting us today. And Creative Sounds, of course, is a music production and audio production facility. They make commercial jingles for TV and radio commercials, and they produce music beds for all types of audio productions. And of course, they do podcasts like we're doing today. So, how did you get into sports management?
By accident. I was playing football at University of Toronto, and I was scouted by a college in the States. I transferred to the States, but to make things fair, had the University of Toronto allowed me to change from computer science and accounting to the law, I would not have gone to the United States. So, but went there, played football soccer for them, and then many of my friends were playing American football and basketball, and asked me to help them with their contracts, because they say, you live in Switzerland, so you must know money, you must know contracts. So I started doing this as just out of friendship. And then one day, there's a player called Luther Wright. He was drafted by the Utah Jazz, but definitely too big of a jump for him, too much pressure. And he fell by the wayside, ended up going in and being institutionalized. So I said, there has to be a business model that caters to young athletes for the transition from 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds into the man's world. You just don't switch it on. And I started a project in, I can't remember the year, but at Merrill Lynch. I sold them an idea saying I'd like to create a department that caters to professional athletes. And we came up with a small agency, medium-sized agency, large agency, and we pitched it, and maybe had about 5 agencies as our clients. The largest client that signed on was IMG at the time. So we were helping them with all the financial packaging.
So you worked at Merrill at the time?
I worked at Merrill at the time. Mm-hmm. And just helping out athletes, I said, hey, I'm an institutional banker, and I found this a little bit more interesting, and then I made the switch.
Awesome. What's the normal path for an agent or a sports manager to get into that field of business? Is there a usual path, or it's varied?
There is no usual path. Either you have the personality for it or you don't. Agents have a specific personality, and I can't be vulgar about it, but I'll be honest. Most agents are there to take advantage of talented athletes because they will try and monetize the most they can for themselves, and typically don't really care about the athlete. Very few of them do. It's more of a parasitical relationship. You have a few agencies who are symbiotic because they understand that if they take care of the entire value chain, and they can actually make more money. So People go to university thinking by studying sports management or studying economics or finance that they become an agent. No. If you don't have good people skills, then you can't be an agent. The downside of being an agent is agents lie a lot. They make promises which are, I don't know where they get it from, but maybe they watch too much Disney World. But they make promises to players which are unrealistic. But the players are so young, and the parents sometimes are a little bit on the desperate side, and they buy into it. Some people will give parents a little bit of money, bribe them to sign the player. And then next thing you know, you have 100 players who are promised the world, and 4 of them succeed. What happens to the other 96? Nobody ever talks about them. So the agents really don't care, because if they have 100 clients and they can cash in on the 100, they'll do that until the 4 start to break through. Then they'll focus only on the 4 and dump the other 96. And that's why you have rotation plays amongst agents. So agents, there is no real path other than either you have the personality skills, organizational skills, and the ability to lie.
You want to expand on the rotation
Yeah.
players a bit. I didn't understand that fully.
So what good agencies do is that they understand that they have a maximum capacity for a player per individual, and if they're representing a player, they understand they can't have 10 strikers or 10 point guards or 10 of the same, because at some point in time they're not going to place 10 strikers or 10 point guards into the market at the highest level that they do. Eventually what happens is they do 2 or 3 and they make promises to everybody, and so all of a sudden the bottom half of the players who are promised certain things, they get upset because the other guy got the job at let's say Dortmund, and he believes that he should have got the job, and he said, well, you're not taking care of me, so I'm going to switch, I'm going to fire you, I'm going to go to another agent. And so what happens is players do that rotation, believing that the agent's not doing a good job, so he's going to help him up. That's a misconception, which is twofold. The player probably is in the wrong team, but the agent puts him there because he owes a favor, and it's a bad match. Or sometimes the player doesn't understand that he has to put more work in to differentiate himself from the other athlete, for the team to say, I like him over him.
So you would say then, as the manager, you help to develop the player versus the agent, who, generally speaking, would probably want to exploit the player.
Yeah.
What sports make up, what athletes, I should say, and what sports make up the larger part of your roster of clients?
Basketball, football, but I didn't start with basketball and football.
Tell us about that, how you started.
I started just advising friends, then agencies. I had agencies as clients. So I've dealt with tennis players, I've dealt with professional golf players, ice hockey, Formula One, horseback riding, tennis, I mentioned before. What were the other ones? Several of them. So I would say that I started really with golf and tennis and with the agencies. Then I did have a stint in fashion models and actors and actresses and musicians. That lifestyle was just, it's tough. So I basically went in, did a little bit of it, and then basically said, I'm going to stick with the sports. So that's, we don't have a specific niche. I was in Formula One for several years, and it's really more about the opportunity. We don't specialize. Why in Jamaica we do specialize. We did try and do track and field, but trying to work with different teams down here,
Clubs.
different clubs. It's very difficult because everybody thinks you're coming in to try and take something from them, rather than we're saying, okay, this is what we're doing for the professional athletes over in Europe. Well, we'd like to give you part of this package for your to complement everything you're doing for them. Primarily wealth management, career management, especially when it comes to double taxation and fiscal compliance, relocation, travel. So we had that. So it became very difficult, especially in the advertising. We had a lot of opportunities to advertise. We've got deals for different players and different teams. And Jamaica is, I would say Jamaican athletes probably fulfill 20 to 30% of their advertising potential. Shelly Ann Fraser is a perfect example. Why did it take so long for her to get a Richard Mille deal when she probably is most likely the most consistent 100-meter runner in the history of 100 meters in the past 10 years?
Yeah, that's true.
And she should have got a watch deal 7 years ago.
Yeah.
What holds her up? Is it herself? Is it her team? What is it? And then when you go to Europe and you see Louis Vuitton or Hermes or somebody doing something with a Jamaican flavor or something Jamaican, you say, hang on. An athlete like Usain Bolt should be in there, or Shelly Ann should be in there, or this athlete. We have a multitude of talented athletes, but we don't maximize it.
Well, Jamaica is famous for people who pretend to know what you're doing when they really aren't. That they don't possess that much expertise.
That's a very political comment.
I don't want to be political. I just see it as I say it as I see it.
Yeah.
So, what is your connection to Jamaica? You live in Switzerland, correct?
Yes.
Tell us about living in Switzerland and your Jamaican connection.
Well, I'm born in Jamaica, in Kingston. My grandfather is from Kingston, so he was the mayor of Kingston, and he was one of the founders of the Jamaica Trade Union. So, there's
Trade Union Congress, I believe.
Trade Union Congress, right? So, there's Frank Hill, Ken Hill, Bustamante. So, I remember as a child listening to them, interesting conversations. So I grew up in that environment, and on my mother's side, who is from Maypen, Old Harbor, I would go out to the country and regular kid just enjoy the countryside. So my grandfather is from the country, and he was into racehorses. So one was in the city, one was in the country. So I believe I'm a little bit of both. So when I come back to Jamaica, I just try to immerse myself with whomever I can, and I socialize, stay in touch with my cousins, and go around and visit Jamaica. So I have a lot of cousins, a lot of family here.
But your family moved to Europe when you were young, correct?
So my father, when he went into the diplomatic service, we were transferred to Switzerland, and then from Switzerland we went to we went from Switzerland to DC to Canada to Switzerland. Then my father came back to Jamaica and then went back to Switzerland. So I would say that my upbringing has been a little bit U.S., a little bit Canadian, and a little bit Swiss. But I take the best out of all three. Forget England. And the only thing that they were good for fish and chips and Manchester United.
Well, you might have some people who prefer the blue side of Manchester.
Well,
especially some of your close friends.
Power to them, they've done a great job. I remember Manchester City; it struggled for many years, and they've got themselves organized, and they're doing very well. And Manchester United, unfortunately, has not been able to manage themselves as a reputation would expect.
Well, certainly City got themselves funded,
True.
and that clearly played a big role in their success.
Definitely. But my father played for Jamaica, and he played for George's. So big shout out to the St. George's guys, not JC. Don't hold against me. But so I realized how important that JC, KC, George's, Clarendon's, that's how that all Mannings is so important, and the Costa is so important. And in my opinion, the all Mannings competition is probably it's the premier football competition on the island.
You mean the Manning Cup?
The Manning Cup.
Yeah.
The Manning Cup and the Costa Cup are the two premier football products on the island, and the best talent is there from Pepsi to Colt up to Manning's. So, and the Costa, fantastic. So I enjoy watching a lot of the young kids. I've seen some 11, 12-year-olds who are just fantastic, but when they hit 14, basically, that's it. Jamaica doesn't have what it takes. So I come down here to enjoy that and go around, and like I say, I take from my experience from growing up in different countries to try and see how I can use it to benefit athletes who want to be professional. I don't focus on kids going to college because that's a totally different business plan. So my cousin was a coach of the Jamaica national team, and so he played for Liverpool, Johnny Barnes. And so I remember up at the Park Camp.
Yes,
Sorry.
Yes, Up Park Camp. His father was Colonel Ken Barnes.
Uncle Ken.
Yeah.
So Uncle Ken, very regimented. We had to do sports, played chess, did lots of stuff. And I remember I was there practicing football because I was going back to school, and Johnny was there wanting to play football with me and beating me up, even though I was older than him. But you could see already he was just a fantastically talented athlete, and Jamaica has dozens of John Barnes. It's just that we have lost our way on how to best take them all and equally treat them in terms of development, give them all equal opportunities.
Which is the next question I wanted to ask. Well, I have a philosophy, I have a theory, I should say, that it is a lack of proper coaching at the youth level that's preventing the blossoming of these exceptional athletes that Jamaica continually produce. I don't know how you feel about that, if it's a coaching issue or it is a structural issue or a combination of both that is not allowing the athletes to develop into professionals. Footballers, that is.
Yeah. There are numerous impediments. There is no structure. The talent is there, but what happens, as you rightly say, you don't have the right coaches for the right environment. The country's stretched. I mean, Jamaica, they have over 400 football teams, all right? And it's challenging. So, and then on top of that, the compensation as a coach is you're a coach here, then you're a coach there, because you have to make a living. So coaches are stretched from running from one place to the next place. So even the best coaches are stretched. And can you put in place a development program in a professional team? Partly, but you're there to win. Then you have to go back into developing kids, but you're also pressured to win. So you have the problems that the pressure to win basically suppresses the ability to develop. So you have some coaches, such as Lenny Hyde, who's very good at developing young talent. There's several good coaches, great coaches down here, who are great at developing players to a certain level. Yet, if we have to hire a coach from Iceland to coach the JPL team, it addresses many of the shortcomings. is the JFF involved in things they shouldn't be involved in? Are politicians involved in things that they shouldn't be involved in? Are coaches being distracted or being involved in things that they should not be? So everybody has to stay in their lane and then try and get to the station at the same time. But right now, everybody's crossing roads, I feel, when I watch the news. So it hurts a lot for a lot of the players. So I would say that coaching is one. The understanding of international football is another. This is, you don't throw together 23 players and send them off to showcase them and drop them on a field and play against a team. That's not showcasing. That's actually embarrassing them because there's no strategy, there's no preparation. So a fantastic player will look very bad because he's not been told what the strategy is. And I give you a good example is that if you watch the All Mannings and All Da Costa Cup, Lenny Hyde had a strategy. Craig Butler had a strategy. Craig Butler had lots of practices before. And when you watch the way the two teams played, you could see that Craig had a simple strategy which he used when he won the Mannings Cup. And it's interesting. So that's where you see the difference. Not that Craig Butler is better than Lenny Hyde or either or. They're two very good coaches, but they are very good coaches, but not enough of them.
Well, I can imagine that Lenny probably had some logistical issues because his players are all over the island, while Craig Butler's players were concentrated in a small geographical space where he probably could get them training together more often.
Yeah, well, if you're able to give a point, a congregation area for most of your athletes, then of course it's easier to manage. But that's only part of the solution. There's a football stadium built somewhere out by Spanish Town, up in the hills, that's not being used.
For decades now, maybe.
Yeah. So wasn't that a big waste of money? Couldn't it have been used to actually invest in accommodation along the island, transportation, just helping to the grassroots of football, than to build a white elephant? That's the type of thing that's not that goes wrong in this. So you just look at the facts. That money could have helped maybe 1,000 footballers, rather than having a stadium that's not being used.
Yeah,
that's an example. So a lot of coaches, I would have taken that money and just spread out a couple of academies, help jumpstart them, feed the money in there, and allow the players to have some type of balance and not stress to rush there after school. That's good money, good use. Not every footballer is going to be a university student. A neurosurgeon will have his path, a professional footballer will have his path. And people have to understand, it's a job. And therefore you have to put an education path, and this is what we do, a development path for the person who wants to be a professional tennis player or a professional athlete. At least you give them the basic education, primarily vocational, and allow them to say, okay, when I stop, I have something, some trade or something I can go back and use if I'm not that successful. So it's not an easy thing, and it's not pointing fingers. It's just that it's putting it together that's a problem.
You know, a friend of mine who who played for Jamaica in the 1960s, early 70s. He played under Jorge Pena, actually. He thinks that Jamaica needs a football philosophy for the country, and that all the clubs should buy into this overall philosophy, or as you say, a strategy, and maybe we could develop from there. How do you feel about that?
He's right. If you go back to the 60s and 70s, and you look at how, as a nation, football was, there was a philosophy. There was a culture. You had the fans were in the stadiums the whole time. It was full. Now you're not full, right? So you lost that philosophy, you lost that culture. But he's right in that sense, is that I was speaking to my cousin the other day, and he said, we made the World Cup. We beat Japan 3-1. And ever since then, Japan has been to every World Cup since, and we have not. What did we do wrong?
I guess the bigger question would be the national coach, I can't recall his name now, the Icelandic gentleman, who said that on paper he has a better team in Jamaica than he did with his Icelandic team that went to the World Cup, because he has players in the Premier League and so on. But they're still not performing.
It's obvious.
Yeah. What do you attribute to that? That these guys are quality players playing in big European leagues. You bring them together, and the quality disappears somewhat.
I'll answer that in 3 parts. When the Galacticos Real Madrid had the best players, how long did it take them to win the Champions League?
Quite a while.
Right. So it's not because you have the best you're going to get the best results. How many Champion League teams or top flight teams have world-class players sitting on the bench who come and substitute in?
Yeah.
A few.
Yeah.
A few. So it's not there's no easy answer to that question, but it bodes a lot of reflection, and then put something down and say, okay, let's get the right people in the right place to execute, because everybody can talk, and that's what people love to do. They love to talk, but the moment it comes to implementing, it's impossible. They just don't know how to implement, and that's why you have poor managers.
Well, that says a lot without saying much.
Correct.
As far as basketball is concerned, have you seen any prospects in Jamaica, any potential here?
No.
No?
No.
Why is that? Why aren't we developing basketballers?
Nobody cares about basketball. Really. That's the problem. We have tried to do basketball camps, and logistically it's a nightmare. You have kids in Montego Bay, you have Kingston, you have Mandeville, you have Portland. How do you put together a camp for a week or two and get the kids who love basketball, who are looking for the opportunity to show themselves, to get there? So when you do that, do you have a place where you have at least 2 basketball courts? Do you have housing? Do you have infrastructure? These children need shoes, they need clothing, they need nutrition, they need to be able to sleep, they need to be able to wake up and then participate and just focus on basketball, not worrying about, okay, how am I going to get home? Am I going to have breakfast in time? I played in my sweaty clothes last night. Do I have another change of clothes to play the following day? Things like that. Can I go take a shower? It's not that is not organized. Jamal Murray did a camp. He never came back. My brother-in-law did a camp. We didn't come back. We tried to do camps. It's just we do not have the right people that we can rely on locally. Everybody's asking for money. I said, okay, we can raise the money, but can you deliver this? But then they want the money first in order to deliver. I said, well, tell me what you can deliver through the contacts, this, that, and the other. And if you have the infrastructure, then we can go and get the sponsorship money to do it. So it's not easy. I've seen some talented athletes who are 6'4", 6'5", who are 14. Physically, they could go and play basketball. There are lots of kids. There are kids out here who are just athletically gifted, who are 6'4", 6'5" at 14, but they don't have the opportunity to actually go and and develop basketball. They don't have basketball courts in the country. And some people will say, well, how about Senegal? Well, you can drive 5 hours out of Dakar into the bush and you'll find a basketball court. Here, if I drive from here to Mandeville, tell me where I can find a basketball court. It'll be great. But the kids, is the rim straight? Do they have a net? Do they have basketballs? So they need a lot of help to do that. But I would say that Jamaica have there are players of Jamaican origin, nationality, who play in the NBA,
yeah.
and who do play in Europe. But unfortunately, a lot of scouts come from prep schools and colleges and take them away, take them up, and the kid becomes a Canadian or American, and next thing you know, you may be able to form an Olympic team with Jamaican nationals because there's so many talented players out there, but bring them back here, plane ticket, housing, accommodation, what they're expecting, you don't deliver. You put them into you have to buy your plane ticket or you have to pay your food, whereas every other national team says, okay, we're going to put you up in a hotel, this is how we're going to be organized. So where's the motivation to get involved in that?
That is telling. And sometimes you wonder, what is the role of an organization like in sport where that is concerned? Are they facilitating the growth of non-traditional sports?
In sport?
In sport. Is in sports facilitating? There's the Institute of Sport in Jamaica.
No. GC Foster?
Yeah.
GC Foster probably does a better job.
Well, they certainly are educating the coaches.
Well, when I go and look at the talent that comes out of GC Foster, out of Calabar, that's the proof that they have something that works. Tell me what InSport has produced as an athlete.
Well, I don't think I'm not sure if they produce athletes, but they're supposed to facilitate the sporting organizations.
And do the organizations work?
You tell me.
Track and field, yes.
Well, track and field, as you mentioned, Calabar, which is my alma mater. Herb McKinley built that house.
Yes.
And Herb McKinley pretty much built Jamaican track and field.
He is the godfather
Yeah.
of Jamaican track and field.
He
yes.
is. I made a film about him, actually.
Yes.
He is the godfather of Jamaican track and field.
Yes.
And respected around the world.
Yes.
As such. And the old, I shouldn't say the old boy network, the past student network in Jamaica is really what facilitates track and field, the development of track and field. I couldn't ascribe as much to the governing body, the JAA, I believe they're called now. Jamaica Amateur Athletics.
I live in Switzerland, so I bump into different federations, and they love being part of a federation. They love the lifestyle. They love the perks. But at the end of the day, they don't do anything. They really don't. They just organize the event. And then they try and get the best athletes to come there. So there's a big gap. I would say that track and field, go look at the athletes, go look at their coaches. That's the reason why track and field is there, because they have a discipline. It's not for nothing that 25 athletes from 25 countries come to Jamaica to train pre-Olympic. Not for nothing. We have something. Champs. It's an international event. So what are they doing?
Again, I should just make the point that Champs is not organized by the governing body. It's organized by the schools.
There we go.
And the weekly almost development meets that lead up to Champs are organized by schools and other interested bodies across the island.
Yeah. So if we look at the ISA Cup, ISA, CASAFA, Tier 2, JPL, whatever, let's look at that. But basketball is another thing. Basketball has potential. That's a project that can be worked on. But if you have ISA saying one thing, CASAFA saying one thing, the JFF saying one thing, the Minister of Sports getting involved, too many people involved in one simple path. Manning's Cup, the Costa Cup, is schoolboy football, and it should be managed as such. It should not be managed as a product to be sold in Sportsmax to sell advertising. I think that's where I think sometimes things go a little bit awry, but definitely I would say that I would rely more on the team structures, better coach, better organization like Mount Pleasant to help get kids on the right path socially, educationally, mental strength, confidence, physical, the technique in their sport. Just make them in a complete package. Maybe they won't be world champion, but they've done their best. And maybe one might pop up and it'll be a world champion. But there has to be structure that every athlete that comes up that path knows what's there and what's expected of them, and allows them to go into society not feeling that like they failed, they've done their best, and then they can contribute after they have finished their sporting career and go on and transition to another career. That's what's necessary.
Well, I don't want to keep you here forever. I know you're a busy man, but I'm tempted to touch a little bit about your family history. You mentioned that Ken Hill, the late Ken Hill, was your grandfather. And I read in a book written by Arnold Bertram that he out-organized Bustamante in West Kingston and precipitated his moving his constituency to Clarendon. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about what you know about your grandfather and his political exploits. And of course, he almost beat Edward Seaga in an election there, if I'm correct. Or he took him to the limit.
Yes. There are things that people say. I know there was a lot of turmoil. There was a lot of it was more about Bustamante and Ken Hill competing, and Bustamante basically didn't want to compete with Ken, so he pushed him out. So when you go and look at the details of what happens, it's politics. And so I follow the politics. My father is in diplomatic service. He's not JLP, he's not PNP. My father is, I do what I can to help Jamaica. And whereas my grandfather was trying to do good for Jamaica, there are a lot of people that forget there were a lot of people, hundreds and thousands of people, who fought to have Jamaica become an independent country. People forget that under British rule, the British will come and take politicians and people and throw them in prison, this, that, and the other. So you can go back to those stories, but at the end of the day, there are specialists who've written books on it. So I will leave it to them. But I know that I enjoyed hanging around my grandfather. He lived in books. I'd go see him and he'd have books and newspapers, and he's always reading and being up on the news. So that's what I remember from him. Just information is knowledge, and knowledge is key.
Christopher Hill, thank you so much for spending this time with us and for sharing your wealth of knowledge about sport, about life, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And hopefully you'll be taking some more Jamaican footballers to Europe to grace those fields.
Well, we can only hope for 5 or 6 or 7 more players who will be that we can take, that we will hopefully give them the opportunity and they'll take advantage of it and succeed.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.